Welcome back. Thanks for joining us. Now we are joined by a special guest, a BFSI technology leader, if I say so. We have with us Mr. Amit Saxena, Chief Technology Officer of Reserve Bank Innovation Hub. We are here at the two-day BFSI Finnovation Conclave organized by APAC News Network. We are here in the inaugural keynote session. Thank you so much, Mr. Amit, for joining us today for this inaugural session.
Thank you very much, Shavik, for having me today on to this session.
Pleasure to have you. My first question to you will be that for a highly regulated sector like BFSI, how did digital technologies help institutions in managing digitization during the pandemic and subsequently in the new normal? Your take on that?
Right, and Shavik, digitization is inevitable, right? So all the BFSI, and it has nothing to do with BFSI as a sector. If you would see, most of the companies have used new digital technologies when it comes for offering their services, because during pandemic time, most of the services are not available, right? So people have to move to a new technology platforms wherein they have to give their services because services are still needed by all the customer itself. So if you see, and that's a great step. And if you see in BFSI sector in last 2 years, you would see new initiatives have been taken by banks with respect to payments, lending, ease of doing a KYC, opening their accounts itself. You would see host of services which have been provided by the banks itself. Having said that, that was the initial step, right? So in the coming years, what you would see new things which banks are working upon, right? So they are working on account aggregator, they are working on lending solutions, they are working on multiple host of such solutions which would be needed by customer itself. So they have not stopped themselves over there only in the pandemic, but they are moving forward. So you would see that digitization of banking would inevitable kind of a thing, and you would see in coming years most of the banks would be moving one arm or the another technology providers who would be providing this technology to the banks so that they can provide a digital solutions to their customer itself.
Right. Taking cue from what you said, that if you see the BFSI sector as a whole, we have seen that BFSI sector uh, has been in the forefront of leveraging technology. One of the early starters of embracing technology for the BFSI sector. If you see last 15 years journey in India, uh, where do you see the role of emerging technologies coming into play in terms of transforming the BFSI sector, be it blockchain, crypto, and so many other things are there? Do you think that Indian banking industry or the BFSI sector as a whole is embracing that new technology in the right spirit, or do you think that many more things are there to be achieved?
So there's a lot of talks which have happened with respect to emerging technology, and I won't touch upon a specific technology, platform itself, but you would see much and more usage of artificial intelligence and machine learning coming into play for the back end processing of data itself, right? Virtual reality, people are taking, baby steps as of now, but you would see a virtual reality because given the number of cycles of this pandemic which have occurred in our country itself, people are preparing themselves that they should be able to provide a virtual reality kind of a experience to a customer itself. With respect to that, they should be able to see the offerings from the banks itself, and especially, and I talk it from a not from a BFSI, but NBFC and fintechs also, right? So you would see there are a lot of offering which would be coming into a play going forward. And at the same time, you would see some of a very path-breaking solutions which would come into picture. If you see that currently we have got like what 57% of our country does not have a smartphone. They still work on a feature phone, right? So there is some solution which needs to be offered to all these people also, right? The same goes for the ladies in our country. They should have an access to lending itself, right? And most of these ladies are working in a rural area, and we have to see what kind of a solution. And we have, you have to embrace the new technology to reach the last mile itself. And what you would see in coming days, and you touched upon blockchain, it's something which is being talked a lot itself, and we would see some work being done into that area also.
Right, right, right. Uh, what will be the role of digitization if we talk about enhancing customer experience or streamlining operation in the BFSI sector? Where do you see BFSI sector going in terms of digitization for enhancing customer experience or streamlining the operation? Maybe 2 years, 3 years, 5 years down the line.
So we are not talking of that long a horizon itself, right? So 2 years max itself, you would see all the banks in the country, and we are not talking of banks only who are large banks. You would see NBFC, you would see cooperative banks. They are already working on embracing all such digital technologies. You would see that because customer experience have come in central stage, give or take itself, right? So it has become a center stage. Otherwise, there are a lot of people who would be providing quick and easy access to banking services through a fintech sector, or you would see new solutions coming into a payment sector or lending sector. So banks are very aware of this, and you would see that banks would move very quickly because whatever time it may take, but they are not going to wait for another 3 years of a time, because this is something which is the core banking area for all the banks itself. And I'm very hopeful that all the banks in our country, our banking system is a very strong banking system. If you see all across the world, you would see one of the finest banking system is available in our country itself, right? Most of the countries do not allow a lot of features what we provide to a customer through a banking, or through an internet or a mobile banking service. And you would see all such things would be become a de facto norm wherein all banks would be providing such services. And just to give you an example, right? So video KYC, if you see, it was done by a couple of banks earlier. Now you see every bank is giving a video KYC service. The same would happen, and it was considered a very path breaking kind of a thing. How come a people can do a video KYC using a banking service without visiting a branch itself? Now all banks provide that service. So banks are embracing all new technologies, and you would see it would become a common denominator of all such services would be provided by all banks across the spectrum itself, whether small or big itself, it does not matter.
Right. At the same time, we also have to be aware of the fact that when we talk about the technology, we're talking about a lot of data being generated, being analyzed, and all those things. But what about the data security part? Because there's apprehension about the cyber threats, all these things. Do you think that our banking system or the BFSI sector ecosystem is well prepared to counter the threats of cyber crime and all those things, or do you
I
think
would,
that something more needs to be done?
Shavik, I would tell you the threat vectors are increasing every day itself. It's not like this that yeah, all banks have to be a step ahead of all those threat vectors which come in from a cybersecurity aspect itself, right?
Especially
So
for the BFSI sector, that's why I asked you.
So those threat vectors are common for BFSI also, right? So, and most of the banks are very well prepared. They have got a very strong team led by their CISOs itself, and they are very well informed itself about different threat vectors which are trying to engage. But at the same time, what we have seen that the customer, you know knowledge should be enhanced itself. So most of the banks have to run that you do should not respond to a SMS which is an unsolicited SMS, right? Or do not click onto a link and try getting into a trap of, or somebody calling you on the pretext of some bank and saying that we would like to do one thing or another thing for your bank account, right? All such. And as more and more people would become aware of such things, you would see that this threat would start decreasing. But at the same time, I would say that most of the banks run a very robust system of for uh, for securing their data itself. So there are a lot of policies which are regulator have provided that how banks should act with respect to the data itself, and most of the banks comply to it because that's something they have to comply to. And at the same time, I would reiterate this point that customer knowledge needs to be enhanced with respect to. And we have got a lot of people who are talking on different forums trying to tell all our countrymen that what you should do, what you should not do. Please do not take up unsolicited emails or SMS. And I believe, but BFSI as a sector as a whole, they seem to be well prepared as of now. There can be a one or two cases, but those are loner cases. They are not with respect to the ecosystem. Ecosystem stands very strong with respect to all these threat vectors.
Right. Amit Saxena is the CTO of Reserve Bank Innovation Hub, and name of this event is BFSI Finnovation Conclave, Financial Innovation. So I cannot stop myself from asking you this question: that where do you see the future of BFSI sector in India vis-a-vis technological innovation? What kind of innovations you're seeing that will be more dominant in coming years or so?
So we are not looking at a particular innovation, but we stand for three things, which is innovation, inclusion, and impact itself. So innovation, we are looking at that we are very open to partner with startups and fintechs in our country who have got a good solution. You are most welcome to approach me, drop me an email, and then we would revert back to you if your solution is very good, right? So we would look at those solutions. Inclusion is something which we are very passionate about. The last mile banking services should be made available to every person in the country itself, right? And the impact, when we say that the solution or a fintech should provide a solution, or a startup should provide a solution which would have a large impact like UPI in the whole country itself. So that's where we come in from, and that's what we want people to understand. And this is along with the technology itself. So most of the, and this is my request to all the fintechs and startup who would be listening to me over this channel, that when you do some research on trying to understand what's needed by banks, because banks have got a very secure uh, security standards are pretty tough, and when you build in a solution, it becomes like, and you feel a bit backed up when somebody asks you those questions with respect to security, right? So we would like to enable you building such solutions. We would be ready to help you out, and you are most welcome to approach me.
Right. Thank you so much, Mr. Amit Saxena. I'll take your parting words as the crux of this discussion for last 15 minutes or so. That innovation, inclusion, and impact. I think those three things will be very important for see the transformation happening in the BFSI sector in years to come. Thank you so much, Mr. Amit Saxena, for joining us in the inaugural keynote session of the two-day APEC virtual BFSI Innovation Conclave. And before I let you go, we have a small token of appreciation for you. We want to present you with the BFSI Leadership Award. Can we have the certificate on screen, please? It's our honor to recognize your efforts as the pioneering role you've been playing in the innovation and technology leadership role in the BFSI sector. Thank you so much for joining us today. This
Thank you
award
so much.
presented to Mr. Amit Saxena, CTO, Reserve Bank Innovation Hub. With this, we move to the next speaker of the inaugural session. Keep watching APEC BFSI Innovation Conclave. Thank you so much.